So, today we're going to dive into a text that offers a really unique theological take on the origin of what it calls heathen religions. It lays out this fascinating worldview that traces a specific path of apostasy, basically, a deliberate turning away from one belief system to another. The argument is that this massive wave of idolatry actually grew from just a few foundational corruptions. So, let's just jump right in. Okay, so the text kicks things off with this really striking image of the conqueror Nimrod. Now, this incredibly fancy throne isn't just a symbol of worldly power. No, according to this worldview, it represents the very first step away from the divine, the exact moment humanity started to see its own leaders as gods. And according to the source, this whole shift didn't just happen by accident. It was actually built on three core corruptions. Three, well, you can think of them as pillars, that systematically took apart the old religious order. Let's take a look at each one. All right, pillar number one, and this is the big one, according to the source, the deification of human leaders. By putting rulers like Nimrod on a pedestal, treating them like gods, the concept of a single, unseen almighty was pretty much pushed out of the picture. The focus of worship literally shifted from the heavens down to earth. Now, the second pillar is where things get really flipped upside down. It's a total inversion of the established divine order. All of a sudden, you have animal life being elevated above human life. This philosophy, the text claims, made animals sacred, and in some cases, it even led to sacrificing people to animal gods, a complete reversal of the original command. And then we get to the third pillar, astrology. You know, the belief that our lives are totally controlled by the sun, moon, and stars. The source sees this as a huge corruption because, well, think about it. It completely erodes the very idea of free will. If the stars decide your fate, where's the room for personal responsibility? And to back this view up, the text points to scripture, like this passage from Jeremiah. From this perspective, astrology isn't some harmless hobby. It's framed as a kind of superstitious fakery that was absolutely central to what the source calls heathen practice. Okay, so we've got these three pillars established: the worship of humans, animals, and the stars. This brings the text to a really crucial question. If these beliefs were so corrupt, why were they so popular? What was the powerful draw that got so many people on board? And the answer, according to the text, isn't found in the stone idols or even the philosophies themselves. The real power, the true allure, was located somewhere else entirely. It was all in the rituals. So what does that mean? Well, the source doesn't pull any punches here. It claims these religions basically institutionalized what it defines as immorality. It transformed sensual gratification from something forbidden into a sanctified, official part of worship. And this brings us to an absolutely crucial point. The secret snare wasn't about worshiping some inanimate object. It was the temptation of these riotous indulgences that were suddenly okay. They had a religious stamp of approval. So in this view, the behavior, not just the belief, was the main attraction. But according to the text, these rituals didn't just stop at sensual indulgence. Apparently, they descended into something far, far darker. And it's this descent that the source uses to build its theological argument for divine judgment. The source is incredibly graphic in its descriptions of what it calls fiendish and sadistic rituals, and it uses the worship of Moloch as a prime example. I mean, that is just a horrifying image, and it's presented as direct evidence of the morbid cruelty it claims was at the very center of these religions. And it doesn't stop there. The text goes on to list other brutal acts: disembowelment on an altar, pulling a beating heart from a living person, mass slaughter, and burning of human sacrifices. It paints this incredibly grim picture of ritualistic horror. It even notes that the idols themselves were often carved with these expressions of moronic delight, as if they were pleased by the whole spectacle. So now you can see how the text is building its case for divine wrath. It's not framed as some arbitrary emotional act. Instead, it's presented as the inevitable voice of justice, a long overdue sentence for what the source describes as generations of the most heinous criminal conduct imaginable. And this quote right here really hammers that point home. It emphasizes the idea that judgment was the absolute last resort. In this theological framework, divine intervention only came after these cultures had pushed their defiant debauchery, as it says, to the lowest denominator. To wrap all this up, the text leaves us with one final and pretty provocative question. Were these intricate systems, the pillars of apostasy, the alluring rituals, were they just something humans came up with on their own? Or, as the source speculates, were they actually designed by a diabolical genius with the specific goal of destroying human souls? It's a really challenging thought to end on from this particular theological perspective.